I ran a business about a decade ago without building myself as a business owner because I didn't realize then how important a piece of the business building puzzle that is. That business didn't last long, but I'm starting it again now. Same business, same product, but completely different business owner. What I mean by that is everything feels different on the inside this time for me. And this video is about what changed, what I understand now that I didn't then, and most importantly, what that means for the business. So if you've ever started something with genuine excitement and real commitment, done the work, shown up, tried hard, and then found yourself feeling like a fraud anyway, like you'd somehow walked into something that you had no business being in at all, you'll recognize what I'm about to describe. Maybe you know the feeling of looking at your work and not being able to tell anymore whether it's any good. Not because it's got worse, but because your confidence in your own judgment has eroded so much and you didn't notice it happening. Or you're carrying the weight of not wanting to admit to the people who believed in you that things aren't working the way that you thought they would. So you keep going, but you feel increasingly crushed by it. The business, instead of feeling like yours to lead and grow and enjoy, starts to feel like something that you're trapped inside. If that sounds in any way familiar, know that none of it is a sign that you're not cut out for business. It's what happens when the business is running ahead of the owner, and that's the important distinction to make. Hi there, I'm Lyndon. This channel is about entrepreneurial leadership for women in online business, the internal work that makes the external work happen. I've been in this space for nearly 10 years or so now, and everything that I teach comes from that experience. So let's get into it. The first time I ran a business, it's an eco-friendly stationery business as it happens. I knew going into it that I had a lot to learn. I thought that I'd accounted for that. I knew I had a lot to learn about marketing and sales and finances and the legal requirements of running a business. But the thing is, I knew that intellectually. What I hadn't accounted for was what it would actually feel like. There's a difference between knowing you have a lot to learn and being prepared for what that learning feels like when you're inside it. Because when you don't know something and you're building something new or trying to reach new levels, it doesn't just feel like an understandable gap in your knowledge. It feels like evidence that you're not good enough, that you misjudged yourself, that you're not as good as you thought you were. And that gap provides plenty of space for your doubts and fears to start running amok. Throw in impatience and it's just a miserable concoction. Pretty quickly, I couldn't tell whether my design work was actually good, so I started to dislike my products, not because they were actually bad, they weren't, I can see that now, but I lost sight of that because I lost access to my own judgment. Every piece of uncertainty, of which there's always some in business, felt like a confirmation of something that I was actually afraid was true. I felt foolish. I was ashamed of what I saw as letting people down. My family, who'd been so excited for me starting my own business, and the vision that I'd had for what it would be. The whole thing just got heavier and heavier, and I would like to say that I managed it well, but I didn't. I just tried to keep going while feeling more and more like I was playing at something rather than building something real, which is imposter syndrome, essentially. And although business tribulations can feel all-consuming, the reality is that life outside business goes on too, and each one affects the other. I experienced a bereavement during the business period that I'm talking about, but the point is there's always going to be something that we're doing or experiencing or responsible to outside of business. So experiencing business unnecessarily as a millstone is at least something that we can change. Because here's the thing, I understand now what I didn't then. The problem wasn't the business. The problem wasn't even my skills, which were fine and have only grown with experience. The problem was that I was building a business without building myself as its owner too. I didn't recognize that as a thing. But essentially, I was taking myself out of one situation, a job, and putting myself in another situation, a business, without understanding the fundamental difference in thought, approach, or behavior required. I didn't have the entrepreneurial decision-making foundation. I didn't have the self-trust that would have let me hold my own judgment when things got hard. And I didn't have the internal reference point that would have said, well, this is hard and unfamiliar and it's supposed to be. And that's not the same as evidence that you're not capable. Without that foundation, I drew a false conclusion from every doubt and every wobble. And that's what I mean when I talk about building the business owner to build the business. The business is only as stable as the person leading it has entrepreneurial leadership capacity. So this isn't about capability. It's about the development of the internal skills that allow you to hold your own thinking when things are uncertain. The ability to stay in the discomfort of not knowing without reading it as your own failure. And it's not just about intellectually saying, well, that makes sense. It's about practicing the embodiment of the internal skills. That's why it's called development, because that means an ongoing process rather than a one-off event. So I'm building the stationery business again now, and it genuinely feels different this time, not because it's easier. The external process and realities of business are still the same. There's still uncertainty. I don't know how the products will be received. There are still decisions and actions that feel exposing, but I have the foundation underneath me now that I didn't have back then. When I don't know something, I can see it for what it is, a gap in information, not a gap in me and my abilities. When a decision feels uncertain, I can make it anyway and back it when I find out what that decision tells me. When things are slow or quiet, I can be curious rather than fearfully reactive. And I know the difference between the two now in a way that I really didn't before. This is essentially the same, but the owner is different, thank goodness, because that difference is everything. So here's what changes when you build the business owner so that you can build the business. You still face uncertainty, but you don't draw unnecessary conclusions from that. You can make decisions and stick to them, not to be rigid, but to be grounded until your own business tells you something worth responding to. You can assess your own work from your own judgment rather than from anxiety as to whether or not it's immediately selling. And when the inevitable hard patches come, because they will come, you can move through them without losing the thread of what you are trying to build. The key shift that I would leave you with from this video then is this. The business that I'm building this time doesn't need to be different, but the owner does. And that's where the lever always is. So if you want something to sit with this week, where in your current business is it running ahead of your ability to hold what's happening? And what would it look like to catch up? If what we've covered today resonates, recalibrate your 30-day practice to confident decision-making is where this work begins, and it's where I'd point you towards first, because it's where the foundation gets built for the decision-making, the self-trust, and the ability to hold your own thinking when business gets uncertain. And you'll find the link to that in the description below. Next week, I want to talk about something that I think is underneath a lot of the stuckness in online business, the question of what you're actually building and whether your definition of success is even yours at all. Because most of us inherited a metric for business success and never really thought about it, never really examined it. And that costs us more than we realize. So that's what we'll be getting into. Come back for that. If this channel is giving you a different way to think about your business, subscribing means that you'll have the next part when it comes out. And I will speak to you then. But in the meantime, leave me a like on your way out the door if this chat was helpful, and drop me a comment with what resonated with you. I would love to hear from you. Bye for now.